Akashvani presents Morning News. Good morning. I'm Anuja Kumar. The headlines. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says India may resume visa facility for Canadians depending upon the safety of Indian diplomats in Canada. 6th Operation Ajay flight carrying 143 passengers lands in New Delhi. India hands over humanitarian aid for Palestine to Red Crescent in Egypt. Today is the last day for the withdrawal of candidatures for single-phased assembly elections in Mizoram and for the first phase of assembly polls in Chhattisgarh. In badminton, Unnati Hooda captures women's singles title at the Abu Dhabi Masters 2023, and in ICC Men's Cricket World Cup, India defeats New Zealand by 4 wickets at Dharmshala last night. And now the news in detail. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that India invoked the provision of parity in Canada's diplomatic presence in the country in view of concerns over their interference in New Delhi's affairs. He said that India is likely to resume issuance of visas to Canadians if it sees progress in the safety of Indian diplomats in Canada.
Parity is very much provided for by the Vienna Convention, which is the relevant international rule on this. But in our case, we invoked parity because we had concerns about continuous interference in our affairs by Canadian personnel. We haven't made much of that public. My sense is over a period of time, more stuff will come out and people will understand why we had the kind of discomfort.
Dr. Jaishankar added that the relationship between India and Canada right now is going through a difficult phase, adding that India has problems with certain segment of Canadian politics. Addressing the Kautilya Economic Conclave in New Delhi yesterday, the External Affairs Minister said, "Today the unipolar world is a distant history, and a lot of the analysis needs to overcome the burden of past constructs." He further said, international financial institutions have not been able to respond adequately to concerns emanating from rising debt and market volatility. Dr. Jaishankar said the bipolar world was even more distant in the bipolarity of the US-Soviet Union, and he doesn't think that US-China will really end up bipolar. He said there are too many next-run powers with sufficient clout and autonomous activity and regions of their own dominance and privacy for that to happen. The External Affairs Minister said the reality is yes, at one level, the world is far more globalized. He said today's situation has changed and the dominance of regional players won't allow any external or global players to enter. Dr. Jaishankar said, if we look today at what is happening in the Middle East, a lot of it is actually, in a sense, intrinsic to the Middle East. He said if we compare it with 1973 or 1967, they are very different. The External Affairs Minister said the key regional players on regional situations are actually today going to be so dominant compared to the past that they are not going to leave that much space for global players or external players to come in. He said people can see that happening in Africa as well.
A second contributor to volatility is conflict in a globalized world where consequences spread far beyond the immediate geography. We have already experienced this in respect of Ukraine. The ripple impact of what is taking place right now in the Middle East is still not entirely clear.
The 6th Operation Ajay flight landed in New Delhi last night. MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said 143 passengers, including 2 Nepalese citizens, arrived on board the flight. They were welcomed by Minister of State for Steel and Rural Development Phaggan Singh Kulaste at the airport. Meanwhile, India sent humanitarian aid to the strife-torn Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. It reached Egypt last evening. Indian Ambassador Ajit V. Gupte handed over the relief material to the Red Crescent for onward transmission to Palestine via the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza. The material includes essential life-saving medicines, surgical items, tents, sleeping bags, tarpaulins, sanitary utilities, water purification tablets, among other necessary items. Today is the last date for withdrawal of candidatures for single-phased assembly elections in Mizoram and for the first phase of assembly polls in Chhattisgarh. The scrutiny of nominations for these constituencies have already been completed. In Mizoram, all 40 constituencies, and in Chhattisgarh, 20 out of total 90 constituencies will go to polls on the 7th of next month. The filing of nominations for single-phased assembly elections in Madhya Pradesh and for the second phase of assembly polls in Chhattisgarh can be done till the 30th of this month. Polling in Madhya Pradesh for all 230 constituencies and in Chhattisgarh for 70 out of total 90 constituencies will be done on the 17th of next month. An earthquake of magnitude 3.5 on the Richter scale jolted Kishtwar in Jammu and Kashmir yesterday. According to the National Centre for Seismology, the earthquake struck at a depth of 5 kilometers. Earlier yesterday, an earthquake of magnitude 4.3 on the Richter scale jolted Nepal. This was the second quake to have struck the landlocked Himalayan nation in less than 24 hours. The Department of Pension and Pensioners' Welfare will be holding the Anubhav Awards 2023 ceremony in Vigyan Bhavan, New Delhi today to felicitate the awardees for their write-ups for the year 2023. Union Minister for Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, Dr. Jitendra Singh, will confer the awards. The portal provides an online system for the retiring or retired employees to submit and showcase their commendable work done, to share their experiences of working in the government and to give suggestions for improvement in governance. In the Kashmir Valley, an infiltration bid has been foiled by security forces in Uri sector of North Kashmir's Baramulla district, according to the defense spokesperson Srinagar, on specific inputs from intelligence agencies and J&K police of likely infiltration in Uri sector by heavily armed terrorists from across the LOC. Troops were put on high alert and counter-infiltration grid was strengthened. Troops of 3 Shakti Corps Indian Army, along with BRO and assistance of civil administration and locals, are undertaking operations at a massive scale to reconnect North Sikkim. While BRO is trying to reconnect the main route, Mangan Tung Chungthang troops of 3 Shakti Corps, along with the BRO and assistance of locals and civil administration, is making efforts to open up the alternate route Mangan Sangklang Thing Chungthang. This requires construction of 2 Bailey bridges over Teesta River at Mangan Sangklang crossing. Working around the clock, the first bridge was completed yesterday. This is Akashvani giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts. Indian Navy will host the flagship event Milan 24 Mid-Planning Conference at Visakhapatnam in February next. The harbour phase, Milan, includes participation from friendly countries. Ships, maritime, patrol aircraft and submarines would participate in the sea phase along with the Indian Navy units. The run-up to Milan, which is committed to India's G20 presidency, is likely to realise the G20 theme Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam and the largest ever participation being extended to over 50 countries. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have affirmed the need to ensure continued flow of humanitarian aid and relief materials into Gaza. The White House shared a statement saying that President Biden called up Prime Minister Netanyahu to discuss developments in Gaza and in the surrounding region. President Biden welcomed the first 2 convoys of humanitarian assistance since Hamas's attack. According to the statement, the aid has crossed the border into Gaza and is being distributed to Palestinians in need. The extremely severe cyclonic storm Tej over west central and the adjoining southwestern Arabian Sea has moved northwestwards with a speed of 16 km per hour in 6 hours. It lay centered over the same region, about 90 kilometers east-northeast of Socotra of Yemen and 460 kilometers south-southeast of Salalah of Oman. The IMD said it is very likely to move northwestwards and cross the Yemen coast close to Al Qaeda around early hours tomorrow as a very severe cyclonic storm. Fishermen have been advised not to venture into the southwest and west central Arabian Sea till tomorrow. Those out at the sea have been advised to return to the coast. Meanwhile, in the east, the depression over the west central Bay of Bengal moved nearly northwards and lay centered over the same region about 520 kilometers south-southeast of Paradip in Odisha. The air quality in the national capital has deteriorated to very poor category. The air quality index was recorded at 310 last evening. Earlier, the centre's air quality panel had directed authorities in the national capital region to increase parking fees to discourage private transport and enhance the services of CNG all-electric buses and metro trains. The action comes as part of Stage 2 of the central government's pollution control plan known as the Graded Response Action Plan or GRAP, which is implemented in the Delhi NCR to combat air pollution during the winter season. Mahanavmi Puja of the goddess Durga was performed with all traditional rituals and religious fervour in Odisha. As the weather was pleasant, a heavy rush of devotees was witnessed at all puja mandaps across the twin cities of Bhubaneswar and Cuttack and other towns and rural areas on the occasion of Mahanavmi yesterday. In Cuttack city, people from the Muslim community have been assisting the Hindus in organising the Shera for long. More from our correspondent.
The Dashera celebration in Cuttack city has long displayed brotherhood and communal harmony. People from the Muslim community have been actively participating in the Dashera celebrations irrespective of their religious beliefs. People from this community have been working as the office bearers of many Durga Puja committees. This year, Muslim community people are holding key posts in cities Jobra, Mangalabag, Tulsipur and many other puja panels. SN Patnaik, Akashvani News, Cuttack.
On to sports. In a battle of future badminton stars from India, Unnati Hooda beat Samia Imad Farooqi to capture the women's singles title at the Abu Dhabi Masters 2023 yesterday. 16-year-old Unnati Hooda defeated the 20-year-old Samia Imad Farooqi 21-16, 22-20. This is her second BWF Super 100 World Tour title. She became the youngest Indian to clinch a BWF title last year at the age of 14 years. In ICC Men's Cricket World Cup, India defeated New Zealand by 4 wickets at HPCA Stadium in Dharmshala last night. India overhauled the 273-run target set by New Zealand in 48 overs, losing 6 wickets. Virat Kohli scored impressive 95 runs off 104 balls. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated the Indian cricket team for winning the World Cup match against New Zealand. Today, Pakistan will face Afghanistan at M.A. Chidambaram Stadium in Chennai at 2 p.m. At the 4th Asian Para Games being held in Hangzhou, China, India began its campaign by adding 4 medals to its kitty today. In women's canoeing, Prachi Yadav bagged the first silver medal for the country. In men's high jump T63 event, India swept the podium with Shailesh Kumar winning the gold, Mariyappan Thangavelu winning silver and Ram Singh Padiyar winning the bronze. And now for a look at today's newspapers, it's over to Renu Kataria.
Thank you, Anuja. The topmost headlines in all the dailies cover the news of the first humanitarian assistance by India sent to Palestinians. The Indian Express writes, India sends medical supplies, disaster relief aid to war-torn Gaza via Egypt. With India-Canada ties going through tough phase, the Asian Age, quoting the External Affairs Minister, writes, if we see progress, Canada visas will resume. Women pilots likely for manned mission in future, says ISRO, states the Tribune. The Times of India reports railways to link 8 ports on the west coast with its network and bolster the link in the east. The Economic Times cites MNCs may face 11,000 crore rupees retro tax demand after Supreme Court ruling. Hindustan Times notes air plummets to red zone as pollution season sets in with contribution of farm fires set to rise to nearly 30% today. And finally, the top front page headline in the Pioneer writes in bold, India proves its mettle, continues victory rally in World Cup, beats New Zealand after 20 years in ICC event. And with that, it's back to you, Anuja.
Thank you, Renu. And now, before we end the bulletin, the headlines once again. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says India may resume visa facility for Canadians depending upon the safety of Indian diplomats in Canada. 6th Operation Ajay flight carrying 143 passengers lands in New Delhi. India hands over humanitarian aid for Palestine to Red Crescent in Egypt. Today is the last day for withdrawal of candidatures for single-phased assembly elections in Mizoram and for the first phase of assembly polls in Chhattisgarh. In badminton, Unnati Hooda captures women's singles title at the Abu Dhabi Masters 2023, and in ICC Men's Cricket World Cup, India defeats New Zealand by 4 wickets in Dharmshala last night. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.
आकाशवाणी से पेश है